Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the John Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline Baker, and I've got our entire team, including our new intern here with us today, and we're very excited to introduce you to him. So, of course, that's Melissa, Jason, John, myself, and then his name is Andrew, and we're going to be talking specifically about having fresh eyes on data and culture. This probably sounds really confusing to some people of what would that mean. We have brought Andrew on to help us with our survey processes, and we are just thrilled with what he's done so far. And we kind of want to talk about how data can drive culture and drive behavior, as John likes to say. So I'm first going to let Andrew kind of introduce himself. We've brought him on. Has it been about a month now? Two?
Closer
2 months?
to 2.
Closer to 2, that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're so happy to have you on, Andrew. So if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So started off in college going for computer science. Then I took some classes in data analytics and fell in love with the idea that you can take this sort of jumble mess of, at first, meaningless data that are just numbers and random garbage, then taking that and having a desired end goal that you want to accomplish, and taking that and transforming it into a way to have an actionable outcome. With that, I wanted to go deeper, so I'm getting my graduate degree in applied data analytics. And this summer, saw a job posting for John Harrison, and it was very interesting. It was this really free working project that I could come in and work on that had me working with data, which I love to do, but it had a clear, distinct goal that it wanted to accomplish. And I found that really appealing. That's what brought me to this company.
Yeah, well, we've been so impressed. Melissa's looking at me, and I think we're thinking the same thing, because he has just run with the goal that he's talking about, the process that we've given him, and it's been wonderful, because as a team here, we can all probably agree that we've been using the same system for years and years, and we just haven't reached out to anybody. We've just been doing it because it works. It takes a long time. There's a lot of hiccups, but it's like we've just been doing it that way.
Yeah, so it was really an opportunity for us to focus on operational excellence, if you will. So the PQDC, people quality, delivery, and cost of this service that we offer relative to upward feedback and employee satisfaction surveys, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But not that there was anything wrong with our previous process, but it was just more lengthy in nature than what we preferred, and it's beginning to kind of become more of the process for our clients. They're really beginning to see the value in it and what it can do in terms of the data, like Andrew was talking about. And so he really looked at it with fresh eyes, and in some ways, I guess you could say, Andrew kind of started from scratch in how that was looking. But I think overall, we're still getting to the end result, but just the way you process that data just looks differently.
I mean, from your guys' initial process, with the ability, well, to the best of my ability, I was able to take what the process already was and how the previous person had done it and kind of transform it into more efficient and easier for the user to essentially get the end goal that they want.
Mm-hmm. And that's critical. And so before any of you were here, when I was doing this, when I was the only employee, the first client that had me do these for us wanted them done on paper, even though I went, I'd rather you not do them on paper. But they went, no, we just, people are going to be nervous about filling out surveys online. They're going to track, people thought you were going to be tracking them. And so literally in this room, I had stacks upon stacks of paper surveys. And then I had to take those one by one, put them into a spreadsheet, and then make those spreadsheets into a PowerPoint presentation. Now, the key thing is, I did that for 2 years, I bet. And the outcome was still similar, right? Like I always felt, even when I was at Caterpillar, data should be driving decisions, as Madeline said. Some people love to have data just to have data. And I've been at some companies where they have no data, or they have reams of paper of data, or they have entire walls covered with spreadsheets because it looks impressive. And I'm like, I don't want to collect any data unless it's going to drive behavior. So paper survey to what Andrew's helping us with now is night and day. But the result should be, to Andrew's point, this is going to help a client. But if we have turnover on a team, or we have to do 1,000 of these instead of 10, we've got a much easier process to get to that data. And I also think of those of you that go to the doctor and get your lab results. There's all kinds of things on those lab results, but most people are looking at cholesterol, they're looking at A1C, they're looking at blood pressure, they're looking at the ones we know are critical. But there might be something that you don't even know what it means, and it's red. And you go, I need to go, I wonder what that one is. Like, is that serious? And so there's data in our lives in many different facets. There's data when you turn on your vehicle in the morning, all that stuff. So I've been impressed as the owner that Andrew came in, again, fresh set of eyes, but he understood what this was being used for, not just, I'll just get this done as fast as possible. So now our clients, I think our clients loved the paper process we did 10 years ago, but now it's so much easier for us. The client gets it quicker, more meaningful for them to analyze themselves and do things with. So I think people can think data is evil, and it's like just choking out all creativity, or it's the only thing. And here, because we work with companies that are trying to make a workplace better for people for the 50 or 60 hours they spend there, you got to measure culture like you would measure safety or delivery or profit. And Andrew's just done a great job of figuring out how we can do it quicker, more efficient, more accurately, but the client benefits.
Yeah, and he's looked at current year data, so to speak, in the process right now, but he's digging into further the historical data piece of it, right? And I think about the chart that you put up on the wall, right, in the session, red, bad, green, good. And so we're trying to keep it in a simplistic format, especially even when looking at historical data, so that they can glance at that chart and they know this is where I need to do some improvements in what I'm doing and how I'm approaching people. But a lot of times with data too, it's very concrete, measurable kinds of things. And that's not necessarily what we're measuring. We're measuring people. We're measuring their behavior.
Perceptions, maybe.
Yeah, maybe perceptions in how they work with or deal with or lead people. And that's a little bit different and can make people feel uncomfortable. But one thing I will say is that the way that this data is presented, we also give them conversations around that data, or we have a guide that comes with it that they'll get. And really what we're asking them to do is sit down and have some self-reflection around that and put a plan in place for themselves that works for them, not necessarily works for John Harrison or what works for even their manager necessarily. This is really a tool that helps people improve who want to improve or change their behaviors and interactions with people who really want to win friends and, have a more peaceful work environment.
Well, and I think what happens is most companies may not even do an employee satisfaction or engagement survey because they don't really want to know. It's better if you don't know. And again, much of it could be perception. And I've talked about this. If somebody says, well, 32% of people say our benefits, are awful. That doesn't mean you have to change your benefits, but you might have to communicate why you don't believe they're awful. We looked at the marketplace and we did this or that. So that's the benefit. And then for individual leaders, as Melissa was mentioning, when I was at CAD, I had to know our leaders walking the talk of the culture. And so this upward feedback that Andrew's helping with, for example, that's not to get people fired or promoted. It's like your lab results. And if 30% of your people think you are unapproachable, then I would expect a mature leader to go, I need to dig into that. I wonder why that is. And so Jason was just talking about health off the episode here when we were just chatting around the table, and he's working on some health things, but I bet you he'll be able to measure that to some extent, whether that's getting better or not. And so I think that's the critical thing, that people can brush off data pretty quickly, but I've used this example before with restaurants, right? People, you might go to a new restaurant, it's not great, maybe the air conditioner is blasting and it's freezing in the restaurant, the food was over-seasoned, whatever. It could be a nice restaurant, family owned, doesn't matter. And you leave and you pay your bill and someone says, how was everything? And you go, oh, it was good, thank you, it was great. And then you get in the car and you go, we're never going there again. And that happens a lot. And you can ask supervisors and managers, how's everything with your team? Great, they're great, everybody, they love me, and we're just a really tight-knit group. And then you get data and they go, well, that's interesting, because that wasn't what you told me. And mature leaders, to Melissa's point, are going to react to that in a different way. But coming full circle, if you don't have a repeatable, easy data collection method, then most people go, this is going to be too much work. And our goal at John Harrison is not to be data experts. We want to help the client understand what people might be saying. But so what Andrew's done is made it easier on our team to just run this process, so we're not spending hours and hours cranking out the data, because that's not what the value we bring.
So, Andrew, from your perspective and just the things that you've studied in school, like even from a theory perspective, if an organization were to want to start looking at data points to consider, are there things that you would recommend or suggest that they look at from a very basic standpoint to help just inform them of things that they need to be aware of in their organization?
I don't think that the individual data points are like the real issue. It's what you're going to do with those data points and how you're going to follow through with whatever end goal that you have. If you're collecting any type of data point without an insight or a beyond that insight, what to do with it, collecting that data is not going to be valuable.
Yeah, it's got to tie back to strategy, I think. And if it's customer retention data, if it's employee satisfaction, if it's quality data. So again, back to the restaurant example, it could be a survey that they send you after you go to the restaurant. It could be verbal. But the other thing that happens with data, I think, Andrew, is that people can see a very small part of the data. And they go, see, I told you everybody is okay with this, or everybody's angry about it. And this happens, I joke about this. There used to be one, generally when I was younger, there was the Gallup poll. Gallup was the company that did presidential polls and polls like that. And you go, oh, it's the Gallup poll. Well, now there's 8 million polls. And I can call it the John Harrison poll about whatever a current event is happening, and I can put in real fine print that I talked to 6 people, and 33% think this is a bad idea. And I think that's the other thing that we've got to be careful with data, is have a repeatable process that someone doesn't just pull out a piece and go see. So that's, I think, to Andrew's point, what are you trying to solve? What are you trying to grow, fix, whatever? And if you don't get that right, then you'll just spin in your wheels with a bunch of data, I think.
Yeah, that's what I love about our upward feedback surveys is that they're based around the I statements that
we train on.
Yeah, that we train on relative to each of the expectations. So when you really dig into it through those I statements, you're measuring the behavior. Something as simple as personal development of your people. Are you having career planning discussions? Are you helping them grow in the ways that they want to grow? And these surveys tell you that very simply, so that you know, okay, well, maybe there's a very small portion of my team that I'm not talking to about those subjects on a regular basis, or I'm being very brief. Maybe I need to spend more time. Instead of 5 minutes in a weekly touch base, we need a separate meeting to talk about career goals, for example.
It's just raising a flag. And this is interesting too. I just saw an Amazon review the other day, and it was a 1-star review for the product. And as I read it, it was actually like the post office like they said they threw it on our porch and it broke open. I'm like, well, that's not Amazon's fault in that case. So you can look at data and go, well, I'm not buying that thing because there's a couple 1-star reviews on that, and you read it and it's like, well, that's not about the product. And here's another thing that Andrew will understand. When I was at Caterpillar, we did employee engagement surveys, and then they would change questions on occasion, which it's fine to change a question on occasion. But they would reword the questions. Like, instead of Caterpillar does a good job on safety, the question said, I care about safety. And so the employees are filling that out. They go, I do care about safety. And they would put agree. And all of a sudden our numbers went from 60% positive to 96. And they go, look at that. Look how much better we got on that question. Well, yes, because now they're rating themselves instead of the company. So, Andrew, people, we're not saying you don't ever change data, don't ever change questions, but you can manipulate things to get the answer you want sometimes. And I think you have to guard against that in data collection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The end goal, of course, is important, but how you're collecting that data is also important. If you're going to only do a subsection of your company to prove a point, it's not going to be beneficial for the overall health of the company.
Yes, so they can go, we did this survey and people think our pay is good. Well, those are all the people that have joined in the last year, and they were broke before because they were in college, and they got a paycheck, and they went, yes, I'm very happy right now. I think that's where you have to be careful too, is that we don't parse data in certain parts of the country or certain employees or the timing of it, right? We just did a big raise for everybody, and we go, what do you think of the company? And I've had that happen where a client told me once it was time for their employee engagement survey satisfaction, and he said, yeah, we don't really want to do it right now. And I said, but you've done it every October or whatever. Yeah, but we just had some bad news come out the last couple weeks. And I went, I would still do it at the same time. You can explain if that causes a question or two to dive in results. You know what that's happening, but don't not do it, because even if you not do it, people go, well, I know why they're not doing it, because they don't want to hear about this blah blah blah. So I think you said it really very good, Andrew.
Yeah, the other end of that spectrum is people who don't complete the surveys but still want to complain about it, right? So if you're given the opportunity, be sure and take that opportunity and give the feedback constructively so that the organization or the leader or whatever has an opportunity to improve. And again, you can be objective, critically objective, if you will, but also be helpful in that feedback that you're giving, not negative.
Exactly. And Andrew keeps talking about end game, which is really critical. So here's another reason to do surveys. Let's say that the chatter in the hallway is our benefits suck, or this is terrible, or that's terrible. Well, now you do the survey, and 84% of people think we have good benefits. So the people that are kind of chirping in the hallway, you can show that. We talk to every employee, and so they go, okay, well, maybe they start thinking, I guess not everybody does think our benefits are bad. The people that are always negative, and I've had this happen, they'll say, well, yeah, they just purposely filled it out positively because they didn't want to get in trouble. I'm like, okay, if that's your mindset, you're never going to get out of that. But it does tell people, okay, not everybody feels that way. So not everybody thinks our company is terrible at that. Or the other side, people might say, our people love that benefit, or they love the way we do our meetings. Well, how do you know that? Well, no one's complaining about it. We'll do the survey. And like to Melissa's point, even if 1/3 says we don't love those meetings, okay, that doesn't mean you scrap the meetings, but what's going on? It's just, again, it's back to lab results. There's a bunch of data there, but this should get you thinking about things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Andrew, we're just so grateful. I mean, Melissa and I, again, we're staring at each other because we've just been so impressed with how you've taken this process already just leaps and bounds within the almost 2 months that you've been here. So we're very excited. And I know we've talked a lot about upward feedback on here. We also do peer-to-peer feedback. If you don't have direct reports, if you're not a leader, we have peer feedback statements that are very similar, but just not necessarily for direct reports. And then, of course, we do employee satisfaction too. So if you're interested in any of those, we will put information in the description box, and you're always welcome to reach out to Melissa.
One other thing I just want to say, because obviously Andrew's a young person still in school, and I think we can get jaded on both sides of, well, these young people don't know anything because they haven't been in the workplace, or younger people can say 61-year-old people like John Harrison are out of touch, and I think when we talk about hearts and minds around the table, which we do in our sessions, we might think race, we might think gender, whatever, but so much of it is just different thought processes. And so we've had really an incredible experience with somebody who is not a full-time employee of ours, but I'm just encouraging those you in companies, go seek out people that can, if it's short-term, long-term, can help you. And we've just all been energized by having Andrew's talent as part of that hearts and minds around the table.
So just one last thing that I'll say about the process and our experience with Andrew in particular is that, if as an organization you're kind of sitting on the fence about whether or not I should dive into a particular project, or, I would love to do this project, I just don't have the resources to do it right now. Think about it in terms of internship opportunities. We've had a wonderful experience with you, Andrew. We're just very grateful for all the work that you've done. He came to us from UCA, and again, that process was fantastic. We actually came to the board, if you will, the job board, late in the game, and they just worked with us so well. And so I just say all that to say, I would encourage you to reach out to your local universities, and don't be afraid to open the door to those conversations, because you might be postponing or procrastinating in a project that really could be beneficial to your organization or help streamline something that already exists. And without that conversation, you keep putting it off and keep putting it off. And I'm a huge proponent of that because of my recruiting background, but also because I was fortunate enough to be an intern for 2 years before my last 2 years of college, before entering into the business world. And now, multiple intern experiences along the way in my career, hiring them, and now, of course, with Andrew. And so I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that process and how to go about it if they would like to have a conversation. So again, just putting it out there is food for thought, because I really think it's a great opportunity for organizations if you're not taking advantage of it.
Yeah, it really is. And I was involved in part of that process too. So I'll make sure, Melissa, your email is in the description box below if anyone wants to reach out to you about that or about doing a survey with us. Andrew, thank you again for being here with us today, and just all the work that you've put in to streamline the survey process that we've been doing. And we will catch y'all on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the John Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.